This is Kathy from Gadget Top 321, and today I'm playing with another sample of ink that this time I got it from Anderson Pens. It's Sailor Haha. It's from the Manyo line of inks, and it's got some interesting properties. People are really talking about it, and so I'm going to be giving it a try in several nib sizes, ranging from my Pilot Fine nib all the way up to a 1.5 stub. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on this. Let's see. This first fine nib, I think this type of ink is not really well suited for a fine nib like this, but I just want to test it so we can see how it performs. Let's see. I call these type of inks watery. They look watery coming out of the nib. They're pretty unsaturated. And look, when you do the little wipe test, it almost wipes it completely away, but you can almost see the complexity that we're going to be seeing later on in this ink. So it's usable. I'm kind of surprised it's usable in this fine nib. It's just, I would say it's not the best use of it. Next, I've got my Nemesign Singularity, and I've never used this pen as a traditional fountain pen because the ink it won't hold the ink, it just pours out. But I've recently discovered this makes a fantastic dip pen that I can switch out various size replacement nibs. I'm going to go ahead and dip it real quick, make sure it's fully saturated. I've got this is a replacement nib that I got from Pen BBS, or it's a Pen BBS replacement nib that I got when I ordered my Pen BBS 308. It's not marked, but it appears to be a medium nib. Yeah, that one's looking much better. But still, look at that. It almost wipes completely away. When I'm writing a little more quickly with these squiggles, you see it tends to show up less saturated. The ink doesn't tend to puddle up like it does when I'm printing. All right, now the rest of these replacement nibs I am going to be using in the Nemesign, but before I try those, my Jinhao number 6 nib just fits too loosely in the Nemesign, and the ink, it didn't want to conduct ink, so I'm going to leave it in the Jinhao for this writing sample. I think the Jinhao, it may not be noticeable here, they look pretty similar, but the Jinhao feels like it might be a little bit wetter. I think I like it better than the Pen BBS. However, as it dries, the Pen BBS is looking very interesting. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so one of the things I like about this Nemesign is it is so easy to pull out the replacement nibs. In my Jinhao, the replacement nibs fit pretty tight. It's just a little bit more of a hassle to pull them out, but that's a good thing. You see how well it conducts the ink, but that might be part of the problem with this Nemesign. The reason it couldn't hold ink maybe is because the nibs fit in there so loosely. The next one I'm going to try is a fully win medium, and I think it tends to run a little bit wider than these first two medium nibs. But another reason I wanted to try it is it writes really well in reverse. That would just give us another example of a fine nib. Yeah, this is quite a bit broader. I don't think I like it as well. Let me see the reverse. Yeah, the reverse is smooth and it's putting down ink. It's just not putting down enough ink to be practical. It felt very pleasant though. All right, and that was the Fooling Wind. Next I've got my Nemesign 0.6 stub that came with this pen. I'm getting my hands pretty inky. All right, I'm gonna dip it. Each time I switch nibs, there's still ink in there, but I want to give it the best possible shot at demonstrating how it would look if you inked it up through the converter. All right. It's a little bit wetter, or I'm sorry, a little bit drier than the mediums up here, but I think we'll see what that looks like when it dries. It was a pleasant feeling. All of these nibs have felt pleasant so far. Now we're going to get into the stubs, and I recently got these stub nibs, replacement number 6 from Anderson Pens. Just like Goulet has their nibs, I was ordering these ink samples and I picked up some number 6 nibs from Anderson's. And so the first one I'm going to try, oh man, that was pretty wet. Get some of that ink back on there. I'm making a mess. All right. We'll see what that looks like when it dries. A little ink drip. Okay, this is a 1.1 stub. And I just think it's fascinating how this nearly wipes completely away. It looks, some pink kind of stays behind and then it goes to a light blue. It's a nice powder blue ink. I'm going to compare this to the Ferris Wheel Press Cotton Candy in just a minute. Let me show you what it looks like on my paper towel where I'm setting my nibs. Look at how the ink separates into colors. I'm gonna pull the nib off over here and maybe make less of a mess. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, last one is the 1.5 stub. I am glad this ink is not very saturated. I'm getting this ink all over my hands, and it's not too big of a mess. We'll see how easily it washes off. It's kind of, the colors are separating on my fingers. It looks almost like my fingers are bruised. Better get the lid on here. All right, this is the last one, the 1.5. All right, let's see what these look like as they dry. Now, let me see, I'm gonna wipe up some of these little splatters. Oh, I hope you'll be, yeah, you can see the pink stayed behind. Oh, and this is still wet. Well, that's interesting, look. The pink is a little bit more permanent. It stays behind. Now, I hope you can see it on this one. This has just a really nice halo. There on the end, you can see it. I can see it better through the entire word, but through my viewfinder, I guess my lighting and my camera, you can see it best on this end. It's pink with a blue halo, but I'm seeing that, let's see, I start seeing it in the pen BBS. I can see that halo. It's not as visible on camera though, but in the fine nib, it just looks like a nice powder blue. Now, yeah, in the fully wind, you can really see the halo. Now, this is still drying, but that halo's starting to show up. This is a fun ink to play with. Now, this, I'm using my Hobonichi, an old Hobonichi planner. This has Tomoe River paper in it. This Tomoe River paper is where you're going to see the best performance. In fact, I had played with this earlier today in an old Hobonichi Weeks, and I like this cream paper even better. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it, but oh, that halo just really pops in this cream colored paper. I love it. Now, on Rhodia paper, it just looks like a nice powder blue. I'm not getting any of the color variation. I'm not seeing the complexity, but it's a nice, pleasant blue. Now, when I compare that to the Ferris Wheel Press Blue Cotton Candy, there's just no comparison. The Sailor Haha is a much better performing ink, and it was usable all the way down to these fine nibs. Even though the fine nib might not be the best choice, it's still usable. Now, one thing I do want to say about these, what I call watery inks, unsaturated inks, is they do tend to feather. In my ARC little notebook that I use to keep ink samples in, you can see it does feather, and these watery inks do tend to bleed through. Now, this is pretty thick paper, so it took the wider nibs to actually start bleeding through, but they do feather. So it's not as pleasant to use on paper that is not, you know, entirely fountain pen friendly. But wow, I just want to look at this one more time. This is a fun ink to play with. Now, me as a person who uses primarily fine nibs, I would not buy an entire bottle of this, but it's going to be fun playing with this ink sample. If you use a lot of broad nibs and you see this was really wet, this used a lot of ink, you know, it would be worth it to invest in a bottle. But just for playing with it, just to see what, you know, the fuss is all about, an ink sample is nice. When I use up this ink sample, I probably won't be buying any more, but it's been fun to play with this. All right, if you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.